let's get business out of the way and let's talk about some real business. And that's everybody's fourth favorite player of the 1994 Vancouver Canucks became a topic of conversation this week. We learned a lot more about what he does and his involvement with the Aquilini family. And now there is a question of uncertainty and a matter of if or not when Geoff Courtnall somehow runs the Vancouver Canucks, depending on who you've heard at this point or that point.
Is this a good idea?
No. We learned this week that actually I learned this morning that when the Aquilinis were hiring Mike Gillis in 2008, they reached out to a couple people. One of them was Geoff Courtnall, who I guess is buddies with real estate buddies or business buddies with the Aquilinis.
Okay.
And they also reached out to Tony Gallagher, and both of them had rave reviews to say about Mike Gillis. And that's why Gillis kind of came out of left field, out of nowhere, to become the general manager of this team.
Okay.
So if they're reaching out to Geoff Courtnall again and saying, hey, we got a couple of tough decisions to make and we've got a situation that isn't working too well, what do you think? I'm fine with that. I'm not necessarily fine with, hey, this guy played for the Canucks and a bunch of boomers are going to recognize him. Let's make you the president of hockey operations, because they did that once already with a guy that has a very well-respected business background that played on that team that had no hockey experience. So
yes, we've seen this before.
Exactly, Gita.
And I'm in the less.
Pardon?
You're talking about Trevor?
Who else would I be talking about?
I don't know.
Well, I hope you're
trying to be real smart. Yeah, but the difference with Trevor is that Trevor actually worked with the NHLPA during that during the 2004 lockout. He was the reason that the lockout ended.
Yeah.
So he had a bit of experience. But now you're bringing Geoff Courtnall in, maybe to an advisory role, which is fine. But we've been talking about the same thing week after week after week. If after the season is done, the players have done what they're supposed to do, it is now up to the ante of the Aquilini family and the management group or whatever they decide. There needs to be huge change, because this is like rot going through your teeth right now. It is. It absolutely
This is a week after Halloween. That candy is just sitting in there.
This is like a filling falling out, and you're like, it's just a hole.
Oh.
You look like Brock Besser on the bench last night after blocking that shot. Jesus.
Oh, that just sounds so painful. You know when that back tooth is sensitive, that molar is really sensitive. That's what it feels like right now.
Yeah, with Geoff Courtnall, it's like, okay, he has no management experience, he has business experience. But the big red flag that's coming up is, Ryan, you said it. If they're going out to him and they're asking him for his insight and advice, fine. If you are putting him in a managerial position, you are doing the same. The Aquilini family is going after the same people in the bubble.
Yeah.
The same yes people, the same family friends, the same yada. The more and more I think about it, the more and more I just feel this is just like a family squabble.
Yeah.
Because one member of the family has gone off and kind of maybe dug their heels in thinking that all the past 10 years of success, in large part, was because of him. And that, when we all have parents, is that when you come to some form of success, your parents will just kind of leave you be until you screw up. And then your parents come back and they're like, oh, of course you screwed up. You're my kid. You're younger than me. So of course. So now I have to come and fix it because I'm the parental.
Can I ask a question about ownership? Because I didn't really think about it until over the weekend when there were names like on Twitter, when you're seeing names like Luigi and Roberto and along with Francesco. I'm like, so who is the actual owner of this team? Because we hear Francesco Aquilini all the time, but he's not the sole owner.
He's like the representative. He's the chairman.
He's the chairman of the Aquilini Sports and Entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And Aquilini Sports and Entertainment owns the Vancouver Canucks, and the head of that, kind of the honcho,
is the old man.
Is Luigi, the father.
Okay, the father.
Roberto runs, there's multiple branches of Aquilini Sports Entertainment.
Mhm.
Francesco mainly runs the Canucks right now. He also he doesn't run, but he's also invested into like Aquilini Esports and everything.
Yeah. So
And,
he doesn't need to necessarily be that overly involved.
No, he just wants to be. He likes to be.
Yes, I understand that. He's a fanboy that has been given a team.
Essentially, I remember to the day that they completed that kind of backwards deal that kind of screwed over Tom Gillardi. And Aquilini comes in and he is like, I love this team. My favorite game of all time is game 2 against the Rangers, where Greg Adams scored in overtime. And we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And your initial reaction with that was, okay, this guy's not John McCaw. This guy's not living a secret life in Seattle and wanting to move the team there and not pay for anything. So at first, and for a long time, he seemed to be the great type of owner, a big fan that wanted to open up his checkbook and make the team better. And then all of a sudden, once the regime changed a couple of times,
right,
he's a little more, he's elbow deep in trade deadline coverage. It just doesn't make any sense.
Well, no, what did I say like a few months ago? Maybe it's that the best owners are the ones you can't name.
Yeah,
it is true. There is also like a slight change where it's coming from just with the sheer amount of money that is in sports and these professional franchises. It's like, you're not going to give someone $900 million and then be like, okay, I'm going to Cabo. Right? You want to have some oversight, but the best thing is that there needs to be a buffer between the people that own a business, unless those people are also like deeply rooted in the thing that they've bought or represented.
Right.
It's like, listen, if someone has spent their entire life as a clown and they go and they buy a restaurant, they're probably going to go and pitch a clown-based restaurant, and no one's going to tell them that is a fucking awful idea, unless someone from a restaurant background comes and says, hey, I see that you're using your clown money to open up this clown-themed restaurant, which I don't think is a great idea, and I think you shouldn't.
Well, they phased out Ronald McDonald so much that there is a void in the restaurant market for a clown-based restaurant.
And so there's just, it's just crazy how much work there is to do right now, especially with Abbotsford coming. They have their front office staff is non-existent. And so
they're going to
now
run 2 hockey teams.
Yeah, Travis is 2 days away from being able to just go wherever the hell he wants. He has no obligations.
He's going to Cabo.
He's going, Cabo, wherever, New York, Arizona, wherever the hell he wants to. Ian Clark, 2 days away from being able to go wherever the hell he wants.
Really?
And so you look at the fact that your front of house and your coaching staff are gone. You have the draft coming up, free agency, and you have to re-sign two of your most important key pieces for your core moving forward in PD and Hughes. You have Abbotsford. You have to stock up in management for that franchise. And you also have to deal with the fact that you have consumer confidence at an all-time low, that literally people have. It's not that they don't believe in the players. They don't believe in the management. They don't believe in what the message is, or whatever the message might be, because it's just been radio silent. It's been darkness.
Something has to be happening. Like, we're all hands on deck. We're sitting there in the Pucks on Net fire station, sitting by the fire pole, ready to do our emergency Jimbo's Remove podcast. And, later in the show, we'll have our pool of what day we think that's going to happen. But like, based on all the dominoes that have to fall and all the things that you need to do, like this change needs to happen on Thursday morning.
Well, we all know it needs to happen, but will it? We knew it needed to happen in January.
Yeah. Of what year?
But remember, there was a week, like I think it was in January, it might have been early February, where we are all like, it's gonna happen, because they had gone on some major losing streak, and we're like, something's got to shake it up. You've got to let We thought it was going to be Travis Green. And I think it was the week that like Jim Benning had his like really crazy press conference.
Yeah, the ran out of time press conference, and we had that 6-game losing streak. And
the
we all
Toronto
thought
shit kickings.
Toronto shit kickings, and then Francesco comes out with the 9-tweet thread saying like, I'm not going to change
the
anything.
tweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, we're at a really critical precipice and where this is kind of moving forward.
It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing across
Absolutely
the
is.
Like
Absolutely is.
people are like, you know, laughing and pointing fingers at Vancouver. It's not a respected team, and players
Absolutely.
do players even want to come here? Probably not.
Well, so the one of the best things I heard was, I mean, Ryan brought up Tony Gallagher, but Tony Gallagher was on Sekeres and Price. I believe it's Tony Gallagher who, it might have been Elliot Friedman or Tony Gallagher, but they just wanted ownership to ask from 2010, 2011, when they were one of the more progressive teams in the NHL. So Lawrence Gilman, rocking LTIR for every cent, calling up
Swindling.
and knowing, you know, being like, all right, these are the rules and these are the gray areas. We're going to go into the gray areas.
Right.
And then investing into the sleep doctors and performance studies and everything. And in 10 years, all that stuff has been thrown out of the window in the name of just good old fashioned hockey minds. The same, you know, the same shit that's been kind of plaguing progression in hockey, and understanding that no one else can do what we do because we've been involved in it and we're in our old boys club bubble.
Yeah, but I mean, it's
Huh?
They've also stripped down so many roles. Nobody works there anymore. There's two guys, and you're watching your sports coverage, and a lot of learned people are kind of starting to say, "What does John Weisbrod do there? What exactly is you say you do?"
This guy,
here?
what does? I'm sorry. Like I have from day one in this man's fucking resume. I'm a little lit right now about this shit. About this man's resume. Again, do I need to tell you, this is the man that ran the Orlando Magic for 1 year, traded Tracy McGrady, and basically set that goddamn franchise back for how long? Then he moves over, I don't know, to Calgary. And do I need to tell you about the Ryan O'Reilly fiasco? You guys remember that story where Ryan O'Reilly was offer sheeted by the Calgary Flames? And that the problem was that if Colorado matched that offer sheet, Calgary has to give, you know, a first and a third or whatever the price was. But when Ryan O'Reilly goes over to Calgary, he has to immediately clear waivers. So if they offer sheeted him and it was accepted, Ryan O'Reilly goes on waivers, gets claimed by another team, and then Calgary has to forfeit a first and a third. I'm not even kidding. He was part of that management group. And so at what point, like, or at what point, how hard is it just to look at people with sensible resumes that might be outside thinkers? And this was the problem with Mike Gillis and Lawrence Gilman at the end of their careers. And this is a big thing that people talked about. You know, they have revisionist history talking about, well, they left us with no prospects and they left the cupboards bare. Yeah,
why would they leave you with prospects? They finished 28th, 29th, and 30th.
Exactly. This team was they made the cup final in 2010, 2011, and with that core for 3 years afterwards attempted to chase it. They didn't try and chase it for fucking 7 years now.
Yeah.
They chased it for 3, and then if you guys remember, before he was fired, he talked about wanting to start that rebuild, being like, we got to move the core pieces out, or this
right.
And he said, I don't know if I'll be here for that. He was let go.
Yeah.
So at the end of that window, he didn't have a chance to go out and we never saw that Mike Gillis.
No,
we never saw that, what he would do with a brand new franchise.
That's normal.
Well, yeah, they were such a good team, and they were still making so much money and selling that building out.
That's normal across the board, is what I'm saying. Like you have a great run, you have a solid team, you have the remnants of that solid team, and you try to do the best you can. And when you're on that downward trend is usually when you let people go and you start fresh with somebody else.
Yeah.
100%. Except we've been on this downward trend, and we continue on this downward trend. We have like little blips, and then we just continue.
Yeah.
But it's never like we've reached that threshold again. It's always just a steady decline.
Exactly. And so people that blame Mike in that period of time, the ownership and the management group, after they chased that run with the core for those 3 years after 2010, 2011, the new people that were brought in, Trevor, Jim, etc., what did they do? Did they do what Mike Gillis wanted to do and we all thought should have been done in terms of moving core pieces out and just restarting and figuring it out? Because the reason they got to the Cup final is they had the West Coast Express wave. Sedins were behind them. West Coast Express moved out. Roberto Luongo came in. Then they also had picks in which players like Bieksa, Kessler, and Burrows were found. Edler, Corey Schneider were stocked, and then that was the wave behind the Sedins, and then you had the Sedins, and then after what? And then people blame Mike Gillis. Oh, there's nothing after the Sedins. Yeah, because they were going for it, and so now you have to start anew with the cycle. But no, what did you do? You had Daniel and Henrik, and you surrounded him with Radim Vrbata for 2 years. You signed Ryan Miller for 3. And then you got bounced by Calgary in 6.
Arash, what was the first press conference Jim Benning said? Is like, this is a team.
This is a team we can turn around in a hurry.
They've been trying to turn it around in a hurry for 7 years. And it's always, and how many years have we talked about this? And Gita's making the analogy that he's got a boat and he's plugging holes.
Yeah.
He keeps trying to turn it around with the wrong pieces and overpaying, so we can't afford to bring in the right pieces.
I'm just going to say this analogy, and if it's wrong, I'm sorry to whomever's listening, to whomever is part of a professional sports franchise that is listening to my voice.
A lot of them are. Most of them are.
Do you blame, it's right out of The Office. Do you blame the kid the 9-year-old who gets into the car and crashes it into a tree? Or do you blame the adult that gave the kid the keys and said, go for it, hon? And I'm not saying, I need to clarify, I'm not saying that Jim Benning is a 9-year-old. I'm saying if you're the owner and you tell a general manager, hey, this is what I want you to do. I want you to take this car. I know people are on the road and people are saying to stay within the markers, but I want you to go down this path that I want to go down. At what point is accountability just at the very top?
This man has been given 7 years already. And
for an additional 2.
And no, he didn't ask for it. He thinks he's getting it. He's under the impression he's got 2 more years to right this ship. And once he's righted that ship, he's clearly going to continue working here.
Of course.
There's been no other general manager in Canucks history who's been given that kind of opportunity. What is it?
Not even the late great Pat Quinn. And when Pat came in.
But we have such high expectations, and we blame Mike Gillis for so many things. He didn't have this kind of time frame.
No, he really didn't.
Gillis was barely here. Based on how long we've been doing this show, and as we creep up on 300 episodes, almost all of them, about 275 of them, were with Jim Benning as the general manager. Like, this has been going on.
And I feel that you guys should be given some medal of freedom for having covered how there's like disinformation about COVID vaccines. There's been disinformation about this team. Just the amount, and I think the fan base what's really gotten them so exhausted is the absurd lack of clarity. And sorry, and I just have to preface also, I understand that you withhold information as a professional sports franchise because it's the Lou Lamoriello thing. The more information you have and hold, the more playable cards you have in front of you. I totally understand that. But there's certain ways you can communicate to your fan base about the direction that you're going. This is a group that the rebuild word was akin to the worst Iranian swear word you could ever say, and they would not say it even if you had a gun pointed to their head. They would not say the word. Yeah, they would not say the word rebuild. And it took that's all the fan base wanted was like, hey guys, like, this is what we want to do. And now we're at this point where, okay, we had the bubble, which again, it was a nice little fairy tale.
It was like Gita just said, it's a blip. If you
It's a
sum up
blip.
the Canucks history, if you like, a friend of mine was talking to me on Twitter